I'm Sylvia Baumgartner. I'm from Labyrinth Coaching and Consulting. Some of you will, I recognize some names that have signed up for the event, so I'm sorry that I'm not speaking to you personally, but welcome, and hopefully we walk a new journey together. A lot of you will know me from OD&D. So today we're going to be talking about the hype of technology and the reality of your own organization. And I think this is almost a bit of a dichotomy, and that's why this has been the first that we've speaking about today. So just a few things to mention. We're doing a series of LinkedIn briefing sessions, these half-an-hour lunchtime, just to slowly start the conversation about AI and digital transformation. And I keep saying AI, but I'm really talking about the whole digital transformation. And so within this process, we should have a schematic in here, and you can see, we can't see that at the moment, but there's going to be 8 sessions, and this is one of 8. From there, we will be moving into doing community groups. So I will say to you, log on to community, because those will become more discussion groups than what we have. So over the next few, I will speak at the end as to what the topics are, but we're going to be looking next week at AI isn't your IT strategy. We'll be looking at the culture around this and looking at some considerations about how to actually start thinking about implementing this into your organization. Let me start, though, by talking about Rory Sutherland. I can never say his name properly. He's a very interesting man. He says he didn't realize he was going to become famous. It kind of just seemed to happen. He's the vice chairman of one of the biggest advertising and marketing agencies, essentially, in the world. And when you listen to him talk, he's a very interesting speaker. But he never talks really about selling a product. He talks about how people are going to behave around a product, or how people will make a decision around a product. And that's what's so powerful about the quote that I've given you from him. The problem with logic is that it kills off magic. And I think from an AI point of view, there's something really important about that, from the perspective of, if we only focused on the logistics, the efficiency, the what it can do for us, we run into the problem of, what are the people thinking? How they're going to behave around this? What will they do? What won't they do? And I'll talk as we go through today, just with some of the experiences we've had around that. So keep in mind, the problem with logic is that it kills off the magic. And AI can bring magic if we're doing it in the right way. But let's talk a little bit about the hype, which I think is also almost, if you like, just about our problem statement. So you can see on the slide I have over here, everyone is talking about the promise of transformation, the headlines. There's pressure to do something. Oh, it's now, it's here. What are we doing? I cannot tell you how many times I've heard in the last 6 to 8 months, we've got Copilot, and I do have something to say about that in just a moment. I'm doing more with less, efficiency as a strategy. Will jobs be lost? Jobs will be lost. Oh my goodness, how many people won't have jobs? Taking security seriously. So I think there is the nervousness of the whole worry about cybersecurity, and then the compliance pressure that comes with that. So there seems to be this piece of the external world's going, go, 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 and push, push, push. And here's a bazillion things to look at. Do you know this? What's the latest thing? There's 100 new AI tools coming out every day. Do you know what they are? Are you using them? Are you allowed to use them? And you can see even my voice is getting faster because that hype is there. But then the reality in the organizations, they are adopting much slower, and they are tentatively stepping. So internally, there's definitely a sense of uncertainty. We get the logic. We understand, this makes sense. It's coming whether we like it or not. But then what? And so I think the uncertainty, there's a hesitation. And more than anything, I think, is the fragmentation. One of the things that I will say from a design perspective, and I'm not just talking about the organization structure design, I'm talking about the design of everything in your organizations. It could be the processes, it could be your business model, it could be how you take products out to customers. But one of the things that's really struck us there is, the minute something is not working or fragmented, if you put AI in, it almost highlights it. So it makes it seem bigger. And I'm smiling at that, because I used to say exactly the same thing when I was talking about org design. It will highlight the things that are not going as well as they could be going. So the question is, what's happening inside your organization? AI is going to work. The tech is going to work. And if it doesn't, you'll fix it. It's almost a little bit like the car is up and running, or it's not up and running. You take it, the mechanic, and it gets up and running, or you put a new one in. That's really the tech part. But how it's received, used, implemented, integrated in your organization is really the question to be asking yourself. So one of the things to consider is, how big is that gap between the AI promise and your organization reality at the moment? And what's really difficult about that question is, I'm not sure we're sitting here totally certain what the AI promise is. And so you can see the gap then becomes really difficult to define. Those of us with an OD hat on our head, we kind of going to go, oh yes, we need to be able to define that. But then because so much is unknown, that defining becomes slightly harder. But I think that we're also in a very good position to help with that. So looking at this, AI doesn't fail because of the technology. The technology is quite sound, a little bit like I just said to you. You either know your car's up and running or not, or it kind of tells you what it needs to fix it. And when I say what it needs, we might not be the people that identify that, but there are enough people that would be able to go, this is what's not working here, or this is what you need. Having said that, there are also a lot of people that are going to go, here's the one thing that you need, or here's the way it needs to be. But the way you put a car together or the way you build a car could be very different for very different people. And there's many right ways. There isn't only one way. And so I think that will be something to take into consideration. But when I think about the technology not failing, what we are finding is a disconnect in some of the initiatives, the lack of leadership clarity, the cultural resistance, and processes that cannot absorb the change. So disconnect in initiatives where we say, I don't know, people do X, Y, and Z. So let's imagine we're in a bakery and we decide what we want to get. We get a recipe, we get the ingredients, we mix it together. We then need to get that stuff out onto a shelf so that people can buy it. That would almost be the process. But where in that process do you have breakdowns already? Or where in that process are things not handled well? So you might go, actually, it's quite an organic process that we kind of decide, oh, this is what we feel like baking today. And then we just find the recipes and we hand them to the people going to get the ingredients. So that organicness is needed in organizations, but it's also not always ideal when you want to automate that process or you want to put AI to help you in that process. So you can see those disconnects. And in organizations, we have a lot of that, especially when something wasn't working and the people working there will go, okay, we're going to solve it like this. We'll do this every Thursday. We'll do it in this way. And so those things work very well until you want to put the AI in, but you also don't want to totally lose that in the organization. So you can see the dichotomy or, again, the polarity of that. The lack of leadership clarity. You know, some of you knowing me in the past will know my favorite thing is not always a employee engagement survey, because we always say the leaders are at fault of something. But in this case, it's a really difficult thing. They don't have a roadmap in front of them. They have not tread this path before. They don't know either. We are all in this together. I cannot help but think every time I say that about Downton Abbey. I know that's not a business reference, but I remember the scene where they got electricity in the big house. And then Maggie Smith played the dowager and she said, oh, no, I won't put that into my house. Imagine we're going to create a fire. And they were scared to put on the light switch. They didn't want to hit the light switch. And I think to myself, we now live in a world where when we don't have electricity, we almost charge the companies because it's not possible to live without electricity. You can see the absolute shift in that. This will be similar, but our leaders don't know exactly what that will look like. What is the right decision? What pathway to go? But the one thing I do know they're faced with is whatever they choose to do, the front end is expensive. The outlay is expensive in the beginning and then will get cheaper over time. And that's difficult too, because not only could they be making a mistake, they might also be making an expensive mistake. But there's no way of knowing that always upfront. The cultural resistance. We are working in a particular way. We have a certain mindset. Things get done in a particular way. Just because you've added AI, you're not sticking it on top of something. You're asking people to work with it or work through it or work somehow in coordination. That means a different way of working. And I know I'm talking very conceptually at the moment, but I will talk about that in more detail. I'll talk about 2 examples that we're working with. And then the processes that cannot absorb the change. So do we do something in a particular way, but actually the processes are not able to actually shift and change, and that becomes more difficult. So one of the things I always think there is, what are the processes that absolutely need our dexterity, our physical and our mental dexterity, because those become harder, but you can integrate again. So let me talk about this in a more I don't know, practical way. So I'll talk about some of the work we're doing. Something people don't necessarily know. So I'm very much in Labyrinth Coaching and Consulting, but our sister business, Click Flow Grow, is actually a software as a service business, is selling software to organizations, but also helping them integrate it. And why I think we've been so successful at that is that not only do we understand the software side and we can actually help ourselves within that, we also understand business or how it works or how people work within business. We have the experience of that. And so the two are coming together. So while we're doing that on one side, I'm using those as case studies to look at how do we need to think about this as OD practitioners, as senior leaders in organizations. So the example, we have an organization that bought if you like, a leads tool from us. So it gives you, if you like, lists of people with phone numbers and what their jobs are that you can phone them to sell your product to them. But there's a big but in my sentence here. What this does is the tool allows you, because it's totally AI generated and it uses relevant sources, what you can do is say, okay, I've got a training program I want to sell. So let me find all the HR directors in the Southeast in companies that are, I don't know, have more than 2,000 employees or a turnover of X. Let me find all of those. And then it will give you a list. It gives you who the contact people are. It even gives you more information about the company. And sometimes, depending on how we've structured it, built it, what can this do? Anyway, so we sold this to a company that sell products to other companies. And every time the sales team saw this information, they went, wow, this is fantastic. It takes us days to find this information. That's the first clue. They sit for days trawling the internet looking for the information. So now it's on a piece of paper for them or on their machine. So we say to them, okay, now use the AI to actually make the first contact with these people. So the first email, maybe a second follow-up email, maybe even book the appointment for you. It can do all of that, but they don't do that. They take the list and they do exactly the same that they would have done before if they'd looked for the list themselves. So they've missed out almost on the whole opportunity. And it was a little bit like saying to them, you know, we've given you a really nice car here. Have you driven the car? How's it going? And they go, no, only when you were here. We've left it in the garage ever since. That's almost how it feels. So you can see the cultural thing we've had to bump up into, because their whole way of approaching a client, of getting to know a client, of ultimately selling to the client, and they're extremely successful at selling. They're a very successful organization. That's had to change and shift. And you just, oh my goodness, I did not expect quite as much resistance. But within that, we could also see, we'd sometimes say to them, now who in the organization does this, or which role is responsible for this, or how does this piece of information move from here to there? Well, so-and-so phone so-and-so. Oh, no, we all do that. There's a lot of this, we all do that. So we started realizing how much we were bumping up against the processes, or where sometimes roles weren't well defined. So the work is happening. The organization's functioning, but now when you want to layer the AI over that, or any kind of a system over that, you start to realize if these things are a little bit messy, it makes it much harder. So can you see why we say it's not the technology in its own right, it's the technology on top of, or in, or with the initiatives, how the leaders are making choices and decisions and supporting around that, the resistance of people. And this is not people wanting, I don't want to use it, or want to be obstropolous or resistant. It's an absolute shift for them. We're not working like this anymore. We're working like that. And then also do the processes support this. One organization we spoke to, they wanted to bring AI in to do some of those early conversations with their clients. And then they realized, but we don't have anything electronic. Everything's still on a piece of paper. So they realized, well, that's going to be much harder. So you can see the road. We had to start much further back with them before we got to the AI. The other example I'd give you here, because this also touches on the customer. So we worked with a particular estate agent, and we've built a bot for them. And I know sometimes when we say bots, everyone goes, oh, but they're becoming much more sophisticated. And I think sometimes you speak into a bot and you're not necessarily realizing it. Anyway, we got this bot for them. So at an estate agent, if people want to go and look at a property, whether they're buying or renting, they fill in a form usually to say, this is who I am. I'm allowed to live in the country. Here's my ID number. This is my address, my phone number. This is how much I earn. So you're not looking at a £3 million house when actually you really can afford to live in a £250,000 house, or whatever the case may be. So there is some of that early data. Now, what happens typically in the state agent is there people are sitting on the phone trying to get this data out of people instead of being on the road showing properties, which is actually what they should be doing. So now what happens is when they get a form in through Rightmove, and those of you who aren't from England, Rightmove is our online portal that when you're looking for homes to rent or to buy, or even if you're selling or you are letting out, you use Rightmove or Zoopla as the place to actually have it online. So most countries will have a similar thing. I think in parts of Europe, it's Idealista. In South Africa, it's Property 24. You'll have those, but they just call different things, but work in the same way. Anyway, so when somebody logs onto Rightmove, fills in the form, the bot will contact those people and go, oh, you're missing this piece of data, or can I just check this, or over here. I mean, one thing we tested with it is we said the person earned 50,000. And could the bot pick up that wasn't monthly, that was actually the annual salary? It would check that kind of thing. Anyway, it then will actually, once it's got all the information it needs, if it doesn't get what it needs, it will give it to the live person. If it has what it needs, it will actually book the appointment with the person in the agent's diary so that that viewing can take place. So you can see, but can you see the processes that need to be in place for that? And now you realize, but the agents are now on the road a lot more, they're in their car a lot more. So then you get a complaint of, I'm using more petrol, I'm using more diesel, or I'm having to buy coffee out all the time, or I'm having to find facilities all the time. So you start to realize it does show some of the other things that happen. If we are alive to that and we're alive to all of these elements, you can see how that can work much, much better for us and just help within that. So let me just take us to the next thing here. So you can see I'm saying AI is not a technology shift. It is an organizational shift. Think about it as a change process. If we are changing something in the way that we're doing it is no different when we're doing AI. We have to think at least through the following 4 lenses. And I am racking my brain going, I think there's a lot more lenses, but at the moment I've got the people lens. So I've just spoken about that whole cultural, the whole leadership difficulty, the mindset, the way people work and how to get them out of that into a new way of working. The second one is the processes. Do your flows work with this? Think of Deliveroo. How often, so you order something online. This is an online delivery service for food, for those of you who don't know Deliveroo. But think about when you go online, you buy the food, it tells the restaurant to start cooking, it mobilizes the driver or the person on a bicycle to go and pick up the food. The restaurant then hands it to that person, they hand it to you, and it gets closed off. If you think of all those handoffs, do our process flows work, and does it actually work well within that? But what else could it give us? Could it give us different management information? Could it give us more detailed information? Sylvia loves a certain thing. When there's a promotion on that, send it to her. You're already paying for the promotion. You might as well get her to buy it a few times this week. I'm thinking of a particular restaurant in my mind right now. The technology, that's almost the easier piece. I know for some of us in the people processes or in some of the other departments, it doesn't feel like that, but it isn't the hardest part of this. And also the customer experience. There's no point you've got an electronic thing and it doesn't work. I phoned somebody the other day. I was looking for somebody to repair a boiler. And I phoned, and the first gas plumber engineer did not answer. So I phoned the second one on the list. But because the first one had something on their phone, he phoned me back about 5 minutes later. He said, you're looking for a gas engineer or a plumber? I'm Dan, I've just missed your call. But his bot actually originally made that call. And when I answered, then he came on the line, and I could just hear that changeover. But can you see, if he missed my call, I would have gone to the next guy on the list, and he got the business. So you can start to see what is the customer experience for him selling something to me, but also for me as his end customer buying boiler services. So be aware of that. I think there will be more things that make this an organizational shift. So within this, where does strategy sit? Do we need something about the flow of communication or information? So some of those flows, and some of us might see that as part of the process. If we go back to the org design place, Naomi Stanford would have always spoken about the people, the tech, the work, or the processes, and the information flow, but she wouldn't have had the customer. So I think there will be other considerations here, but at a minimum, if one of these fails, the whole system fails. Somebody actually wrote very recently that if your people are not behind an AI integration, everything fails. And that's a really interesting way of looking at it, because it does feel very dramatic, but there is something about that as well. So I want to just turn the page and just know where I am. So just giving this some thought, I want us to just take a step back and go, if AI landed in your organization tomorrow, just imagine it was just pop, it's in the organization, it fell through the ceiling. Where would it quietly fail in your organization? I just want to give you a couple of, 10, 15 seconds just to think about that. Where would it fail in your organization and why? And if you struggle with this, you could even think of those 4 prompts that I just gave you, all those 4 lenses. But think wider too. Where would it fail in your organization? Where would the biggest people resistance be in your organization? Where would the process block any kind of progress? So where do you know the process might be a little bit weaker and could block something? Where would decisions slow things down? Where are we reluctant or unsure to make some of the decisions? Where would your leaders be unclear or absent? One of the thoughts that I will leave you with is that AI doesn't usually fail dramatically. It just doesn't stick. So even if we've spent the money, we've gone to the trouble to put it in, if it kind of doesn't work, it just has that slowing down until eventually it just stops and people don't use it. That makes it very hard to see and very hard to fix. It is something that we want to be on top of, we want to be watching, and we want to be conscious how we're putting it in. So on that note, this was session 1 of 8. I'll encourage you to join us for the all 8. And again, you'll see them on LinkedIn. Hopefully I'll be logged in earlier next week. I'm so sorry for our technical, we had a technical problem, as you can tell. Next week, we will have a look at why your AI strategy is not your IT strategy, why your AI strategy is not your IT strategy. We'll look at the cultural readiness. We'll look at what readiness really means. Just on that, some of this comes from, we've actually built an AI readiness tool that is available, and organizations are slowly starting to use it to actually see what do we need to be focusing on, so that in a way they're doing it in a more holistic way, but it also gives them some starting points and gives some comfort to the senior leaders. So I thought I'd just mention that, because I want to be doing any selling on this. I will remind us each week of what the sessions are, but it gives us a sense of awareness of what's going on, how you do something about it, and then how we, if you like, start to integrate this or get this into our organization. But again, appreciating we only have 30 minutes at a time together. Just finally, just to mention a few things from our side. So we're going to do 8 sessions, and part of this has been because we've moved from just having our OD leadership consulting practice to actually being really strong in the AI. We realized that because of Click, Flow, Grow and the work that we're doing with that, we really telling people out there that this is who we are, what we're doing, and how we're moving this with the intelligent OD. What I'll encourage you to do is join our community. The community will start in a few weeks, but what the community will do is we will have topics, but it's more of a discussion. So we will be together, we'll be talking to each other. It won't just be me giving input. So if you like, these 8 sessions are, we're here, let me tell you about us. And the dialogue sessions are, we're more in dialogue and exploration. And I think that could be quite rich. For some of you, you've already started giving some ideas of topics that you want to see there. But I also have some idea of what I want to have there, just given the last year of research and looking at this and seeing in organizations what's working and what's hindering. I'd encourage you, just go to labyrinthcc.com website. You can join the community. You can see what else is there. Anything that you need, you'll be able to find us there. And if you need to get hold of us, I will leave this up on the screen for a moment so that you can see it. But other than that, thank you for your time today. I hope that it was that you have something that leaves you thinking. Remember, the problem with logic is that it takes away all the magic. One of my favorite, I think, mentors used to say to me, always leave people thinking about something they weren't thinking about before you got there. So I hope I've at least left you thinking about something about your own organization, and to actually help us to, if you like, almost demystify AI, but become people that can help our organizations think it through, plan it, and integrate it. So thank you for your time, and I will hopefully see you next week. Thanks.